Israel has for the first time targeted a Gulf state, Qatar, a key US ally, in attacks that targeted Hamas officials residing in Doha. Qatar has called this state terrorism, and an outpouring of condemnation came out not only from the Gulf but internationally. Even US President Donald Trump said he was unhappy with the strikes. I'm joined by Mina Al-Arabi, our editor-in-chief here at the National's newsroom, and I'm your host, Nada Al-Tahir, for Beyond the Headlines. Mina, what is Israel's justification for this strike? Why now?
So Israel has said that it wants to eliminate Hamas, that they will take out Hamas leadership. We've seen it in Gaza for the last year and a half. Of course, many innocent people have died along the way, but they said that they have a target of eliminating Hamas. Hamas's Politburo, or political office, the main actors are in Doha. This is known to the world. They have been seen publicly, and also they are negotiating through the Qataris and the Egyptians with the Israelis and the Americans to bring the war to an end. So the Israelis claim this is their way to eliminate Hamas. Of course, first of all, they were in negotiations, so it shows a lack of respect or commitment to diplomacy from the current Israeli government. But even more importantly, of course, this attack happened in Doha. And so this idea that Israel feels it has carte blanche to carry out attacks in Yemen, taking out the Houthi prime minister a few days ago, taking out Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon last year. This idea that they can strike wherever they want so long as they are taking out their enemies. This felt unbelievable on the one hand, but on the other hand, almost natural next step for the audacity of what the Israeli government can do when it comes to carrying out what they perceive to be their necessary risk reduction, eliminating their enemies.
What can you tell us about the timing? We know that there's a UN conference upcoming. We know that Israel had agreed to a US proposed ceasefire for Gaza. And then there's also Netanyahu's corruption trial.
So I think the thinking for the Israelis always has been, if they have enough capability and they have the intelligence of where they can carry out a strike, they will carry out a strike. But at the same time, the timing, as you said, comes before the UN conference for the recognition of a Palestinian state. Now, of course, that has nothing to do with benefiting Hamas. That is actually for a Palestinian state that would be run by the Palestinian Authority. No one is excited about having Hamas run it. And certainly France and Saudi Arabia, in their efforts to have this conference in New York towards the end of September, is in order to have the future of a Palestinian state. More important in terms of timing was the fact that there were negotiations happening in Doha on the day of the Israeli strike. And so the timing of it is to basically say, yes, you can have these people mediating, but actually, as far as we're concerned, we want to eliminate them. And so then it shows, again, this approach by the Israeli government that they want to end this militarily in whichever way suits them. And when I say end this, it is basically to say that they can run Palestinian territories in the way that they want. This is not, of course, in any way to sound in support of Hamas or even the condemnation, as you rightly said, coming from the Gulf states, coming from the UN Secretary General. It is about the violation of the sovereignty of Qatar. It is about striking a country that has done nothing except try to bring peace to the region, especially since the Hamas attacks of October 7th, but also has put in a lot of effort to work with the Israelis. I mean, again, it was through Qatar that funds were transferred to Hamas that was in coordination with Israel for years and years and years before October 7th attack. So Qatar has worked in coordination with Israel at different points. And so the idea, this is how Israel decided at this point to interact with Qatar. And so I think there is an overemphasis almost, but the target was Hamas. That's, in my point of view, not the primary issue.
Yeah.
The primary issue is that Qatar is a sovereign state. Mm-hmm. And as you said, this is Israel striking into the heart of the Gulf. Mm-hmm. And therefore, what does it mean if you have an Israeli government that largely is unleashed? And I think that is the calculation that officials are making here in the Gulf, where, coming from our newsroom in Abu Dhabi, it was very clear the reactions from Abu Dhabi were immediate after the news of a strike in Doha, and that not only full solidarity with Qatar, but also saying that the security of Qatar is within the security of the Gulf, and you cannot segment it one and the same. So if there's going to be a strike on Doha, then all of the Gulf countries are assessing what this means. We saw a very quick rallying around Qatar, but also the day after, and we are in the day after moment of what steps can be taken to say this is a line that cannot be crossed. There's a line that has been crossed. It can't become the norm ever.
And this is not the first time that Israel has targeted negotiators. They killed Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. And at the same time, they said that they were targeting Hamas officials, right? But Khalil al-Hayya, which is one of their primary targets, seems not to have been killed, according to Hamas. Is there a fear that they're going to strike again on Doha to kill Khalil al-Hayya?
So the outcome of the actual strike in the immediate news was not clear, but it seems that the Hamas leadership that was being targeted hasn't been assassinated. Now, would they do it again is a question that, again, Gulf officials, Qatari officials are asking. And that's why the U.S. position is so important. Because if anyone's going to stop Israel, it's the U.S. You know, the UN condemning is not going to make a difference. Threats from the Arab world or from Europe really haven't brought any change. America can have an impact. And that's where Qatar will be looking to see a response from the U.S. that is convincing. Now, Donald Trump called the Emir of Qatar immediately after the attacks, and he said that he will make further statements. But what will happen is that the United States needs to say, this will not happen again. And it is them who can be the only guarantors at this point that Israel won't strike again. Will the U.S. give that sort of security guarantee? It's unclear, but it's absolutely vital at this point. That is the only guarantee that can be given. Nobody trusts the Israeli government, so anything that comes from them, and they won't commit ever. They've never committed in the past not to carry out attacks anywhere, frankly. So it will be up to the U.S. to make those guarantees.
And we were so close to a ceasefire in Gaza, and it seems that if you're killing the very people that you're indirectly negotiating with, what is the end game here?
I mean, about being close to a ceasefire, I don't know, is the honest truth. Because in the last year and a half, there have been different points where we felt that we're very close and it falls through for whatever reason. Hamas did drag its feet previously and did miss opportunities in the past. And the Israeli government also has not been keen on getting to a ceasefire, has been pushed and prodded by different sides. So where do we go from here is an important question. It is one that, while the Qatar attack is one that's very, very significant because it's unprecedented, the ongoing attacks in Gaza continue, and Israel's plans continue to take territory from Gaza, but also putting in plans that really question whether there will be a Palestinian state. So I think that thinking, that approach by Israel is not changing. So what is important is going to be, again, what America does, what the UN feels is in its capacity to do, and how the Arab countries respond in order to come to a ceasefire, but also to say to Israel that you cannot continue to strike at Arab countries. So don't forget, just hours before the Doha attack, Israel had struck Syria in two different locations in Latakia and Hamas. This is a very fragile moment for Syria. You know, the president there and the governance there is still very fragile after the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime. And yet Israel feels that if we feel insecure, we can go and strike. And of course, they continue their strikes on Lebanon intermittently, strikes on Yemen and so forth. And Israel is no safer for it. So even if they were to excuse what they're doing, say that we are safer, they're not. And so the question becomes, well, at what point does the Israeli population turn on its government and say, actually, you're not making us safer. You're ending relationships with Arab countries that we've worked hard to try to create. And how do you change that dynamic? And I honestly think that it has to be an internal Israeli pressure and also an American outside pressure.
Thank you so much, Mina, for joining us on Beyond the Headlines. You can listen to this episode wherever you get your podcasts. And we will have another episode this week on Friday. Follow the news more on thenationalnews.com for this story and others.